We're live.
Okay, awesome. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining the GCSD Safety and Technology Committee meeting for April 15th. We're going to go ahead and get the meeting started. First thing, let me share the agenda. Let's do that. Let's follow our process here. Agenda, share. Okay, so hopefully you can all see that now. Awesome, thank you. All right, so first thing up on the agenda, we wanted to review and approve the minutes from our last meeting. So let me go ahead and pull those up. All right, and they should be on the screen now. So the Security, Safety and Technology Committee met on March 11th, 2021. We called the meeting to order at 5:38 p.m. Participants were Carlos Ramirez, David Warner, Neo Ragudio, Chris Cardi, Diego Rendon, Ashley Pineda, Antoinette Darden-Cintron, and Laser Alert. The first action item on our agenda was to review and approve the minutes from the previous meeting, which was on February 25th. The committee reviewed the minutes, we approved it. Second thing on the agenda was talk about the data privacy policy and the latest Parents' Bill of Rights and the current approval status. That was covered by our board president, Antoinette Darden-Cintron. She referenced that it was following the same process as any other board policy, and that the clerk was working with Dr. Reynolds and the lawyers to take a look at it, and then it would get to the BOE at some point to make a decision. Third topic on that meeting was the safety and security update. There was a conversation on security cameras that was behind in private session for obvious reasons. We came out of that. Fourth item on the agenda was an update on the instructional technology. Mr. Ramirez and Mr. Rondon gave us a brief update on the iReady middle of year assessment, how it went, how the scheduling occurred, and what was going on in the process. They then moved on and gave us a summary on Neuropath and how that had already been fully deployed as a service, and they were working on scheduling training. From there, we went on to a conversation on reopening of schools. Mr. Ramirez gave us a running inventory of hardware in classrooms. He discussed the upgrades to our network infrastructure to support the live meetings that we were increasingly providing. The tech department met with the business office and facilities in order to coordinate the needs of the opening plans and the evaluation of programs to make sure that the right programs are being chosen based on what we needed to do. From then on, we had an update on the Chromebook distribution and ongoing replenishment of the malfunctioning devices. We had the summary that we had gone from 120 down to about 30 remaining students. There was a deployment the week prior to that on March 5th, and there was a scheduling with parents going on in order to pick up the devices, as well as they provided dates of March 12th and March 26th, respectively, for Highview and RJ Bailey deployments. From there, we had an update provided by Mr. Ramirez on the technology and facilities coordination and planning meeting. And that's covering the fact that there needs to be a conversation between the Safety and Technology Committee and the Fiscal Financial Committee and ensuring that we're aligned when we're making plans moving forward in terms of capital projects, et cetera, across all departments. I had referenced an idea on how we could approach the two committees in the future at that point in time. And then we had a discussion on the GCSD website and the plans to upgrade it. President Darden-Cintron gave us a high-level summary that there was a subcommittee that was taking a look at the usage of the website, as well as the ease of use being taken into consideration as to how easy it is to use the website. From then on, we had a few miscellaneous topics. Essentially, there was an idea presented by President Darden-Cintron based on something she had seen in other districts. They had a COVID dashboard that was being constantly updated on their website. Laser Alert also suggested renaming the reopening site to COVID. Laser Alert also shared the link to the IBO site that's currently live as a template for future pages to be developed. And we had a small little quick presentation on that. That was a very impressive site. And then at that point, I called up for a motion to end the meeting, and that motion was seconded by all, and we ended the meeting at 6:37 p.m. Does anybody feel that these minutes need to be corrected in any way? Okay, so let me stop the share on this. Let me go back to our agenda.
And make a motion to adopt them?
Yes, let me just get to the agenda real quick.
Okay.
Okay, so now that we've read the minutes and it seems like everyone at the committee is agreeing that that's how it happened, is there a motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. So we go ahead and we're approving the motion, the minutes from the last meeting. Item number 2 on our agenda is the Data Privacy Policy and Parents Bill of Rights. So the board president was going to cover this one, but in her absence, I'll go ahead and cover it. At this point in time, we did have a check-in today, and the policy, the draft of the policy is currently sitting with our attorneys. They're performing their review, and we anticipate as soon as that completes, it will get sent over back to the board at this point to start reviewing the draft policy. So that is moving along. Dr. Chase is going to follow up with the attorneys tomorrow just to find out if there's any ETA on that, as we did express urgency based on our previous conversations. Item number 3, the safety and security update. Mr. Parker did email me earlier this morning to advise that he was not able to make this meeting because he had a conflict with, I think it was the 6th grade orientation meeting. So that said, he did provide a small brief update. I'll go ahead and mention it. Basically, there were some concerns. Oh, let's see, our board president is joining mobily. Hi, Antoinette.
Hello.
Thank you for joining.
All right, I'm sorry that I'm late. I just left work.
No worries. Feel free to not have to stare at the screen. I don't want you getting into an accident here.
I won't. My anxiety levels and fears are anxious and very high, so I'm really trying to practice some good SEL and just be more zen. So I won't be doing anything that will put me into harm's way.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. So the update that Mr. Parker provided was essentially just that there are still some concerns in terms of cameras for one of our school buildings, and we can talk about that in private session. In the interim, I think we'll keep the agenda going, and maybe the best thing to do is by the time we get to the end of the agenda, we'll go back to the camera discussion so we don't hold up the listening public. The next thing, let's go ahead and talk about item number 4, status update on instructional technology. Mr. Ramirez, Mr. Rendon, I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Pineda. So we continue with our efforts to provide support and to the instruction and to the teachers via professional development. We recently have a meeting, and Mr. Rendon is going to share all the data that we actually capture in the meeting with Neuropath. Is the 3rd month since we got the full subscription for our teachers, and the increased use of sessions using Neuropath with the students is continuous and consistent. So January, February, and March, we have an increase in the number of sessions and the number of that interactivity using Neuropath features in Google Slides and PowerPoints and different tools that the teachers use, the educators use to instruct the children. We're very happy with this outcome, especially being kind of in the middle of the school year that we adopted the full subscription, but we want to be sure that we will empower our educators with the resources. We continue with the assessments with iReady. We have now moved to the next level, which is basically data analysis. We're looking at the data that we capture between the beginning of the year and the middle of the year, and we're planning, we're basically working on preparation for our instructional planning for the end of the year and ensure that our students gain and we can use the information to provide to the educators so they can actually adjust their planning in the classroom. I'm going to ask Diego to share some of the metrics that we discussed with Neuropath, and if he has any other updates also he can share with the rest of the group. Go ahead, Diego.
Diego, do you need to share anything on your screen, or are you just going to talk through it?
No, I think I'm going to talk through it because I'll have to kind of sort out through the slides.
No problem. No problem.
To piggyback off Mr. Ramirez, I'll do with Neuropath first. We had deployed the service in January, and we were able to get the last Friday before the break. We had sessions working with Laura DeAndrea. We scheduled those sessions with all the principals, and we had 4 sessions that day. I was the one that did ran the session. So we were able to cover from ECP all the way to grade 12. Teachers were part of the different sessions that we had throughout the day. It was an introduction of what Neuropath is, how it can be used and implemented in the classroom. And since that day, like Mr. Ramirez mentioned, the metrics of usage have increased. Again, is one more tool that a teacher can add to their repertoire of different tools. So this is not that everybody needs to use it, but we are showing all our teachers that we have it and what it can do. And so there are some people that already have everything set up, but it's nice to show them another alternative. And then obviously we have those teachers that were very comfortable with it from the beginning, or they were already using it. So we're taking advantage of having the full version, if you will, of Neuropath. So those teachers were just able to run with it. And so we had some very successful sessions on that Friday. That being said, now that we are back to full week schedule, if you will, now we're just kind of trying to come up with when can we do more training for those teachers that want to go to the next level or more in advance. We still haven't kind of figured that out where that's going to fit into our new schedule. But we're waiting to hear back on that, and then we'll go forward with more training on other tools and Neuropath. As far as iReady, as Mr. Ramirez mentioned, we're now in the data analysis process of looking at the beginning of year and the middle of year iReady assessment that took place. And believe it or not, we're already planning for the end of year. There's some preliminary schedules that we put together, waiting for obviously all the parties involved to approve it, and then we would release it. But we're already looking at that, making sure that we follow the required, or actually recommended window between one assessment and the next. And so hopefully by the next time we meet, we'll have more concrete dates to announce.
That's great. Thank you for that update. I do have one question on the Neuropath. So we covered the fact that the teachers are getting training, et cetera. Are the teachers the ones that are training directly the students and kind of guiding them through, exactly how the product is used, et cetera?
Yeah, so the way Neuropath works is that the teacher builds lessons. Think of it of enhancing Google Slides, right? So it just adds a level of interactivity to your Google Slides by inserting quizzes, polls, collaborative boards. So it allows the teacher to ask of the students for immediate feedback. So is there a steep learning curve with the product? No, especially because it behaves the same way as other tools do, like Kahoot, where there's a code, right? So the kids just get a code and a place to go to join. There's really not a lot of content creation on the student side, if you will. And when there is, it's all driven by the teacher and their lesson. So there isn't a big curve there to learn how to navigate it, as opposed to having, you know, a blank canvas, a Google slide or something like that. That hasn't been an issue reported back to us as like we need to do that for the students. It's pretty straightforward of nearpod.com/sign-up and code. So.
Okay, thank you for that. Antoinette, it looks like you have a question.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I guess I have two questions. I'm just curious as to a little bit more about Nearpod. I haven't really used it. My school actually uses a whole different tool. I'm curious as to Nearpod is, I guess, how are so far. Let me ask a couple things. So, is there a parent who has access to it? Let me ask that first. I'm sorry.
So there are two sides to this. Is the teacher side, which is the generator of the content and the interactivity in the lesson, and there's the student participation. So those two components work in there. Like Mr. Rendon mentioned before, the teacher has the ability to create surveys, instant questioning. There can be some interactivity with the students, and they have the ability to actually interact at the time that the delivery or the instruction is happening. You wanna extend a little bit more on that, Diego?
No, I guess so lessons or students are participating and completing lessons through Nearpod. Am I correct?
Yeah, so there's two ways. There is a what they call live participation. So if I'm the teacher and I have 20 kids in my class, I'm the one driving the slides and everybody joins at the same time. And as we progress through the slides, I control the slides and what you see on your screen. Then there is a student-paced version of it that can be assigned. So if I'm a teacher and I have an activity, I can assign it that way within Google Classroom, and then the student interacts at their own pace. They get to basically go through the slides or the content that the teacher has created and fill in, you know, the answers, whether it's an open-ended question, the quizzes, the games, because there is some gamification in Nearpod. So depending on what the activities are in the lesson, the students respond to that, and then the teachers get those responses. Another piece of the paid version is the availability of lessons that are already created, content that's already created. And that's one of the big benefits of the paid version versus the free version.
Okay.
Which gives you access to a lot of pre-made and curated content across all grade levels and all major subjects. So as part of our training, we touched on the availability of all that content. So you don't necessarily have to start from scratch. You can look at a lesson and adopt it as is, and or make your own tweaks to it, whether you remove something or change some of the wording, sequence of delivering the instruction, and or if you have what you consider a better resource than what's there, then you modify it and then you make it your own. But it's a nice way to get your new users started into using Nearpod, because you know it can be a bit overwhelming starting from scratch, or for me to say to a teacher, okay, convert all your lessons to Nearpod. That's a huge undertaking for any teacher. So we drilled a lot on the pre-made content that was there. We drilled on how to preview that content, how to analyze it and use it so that you can get, as a teacher, get used to it. And then from a student perspective, also get familiarized with how a Nearpod lesson flows, what it feels like, what the teacher's asking, and then it goes from there.
Does it also check like progress as students, you know, complete work, complete lessons, different things like that? And do parents have access to it just to see how, or if they don't have access, is there some sort of reporting that parents can get to
So,
see how child's doing.
so we have to make sure Nearpod is a tool to deliver instruction.
Mhm.
Is not necessarily like iReady, right? It's not that type of program. So this is more just to make interactive delivery of content that the teacher can make, or it's already there. So it's not that scripted, and it doesn't provide that level of
Adaptability.
assessment and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
So there is no
What-
reporting. There is no reporting feature in there embedded. However, the teachers can do it, and they definitely do. And the best outcome to the use of this instructional tool is, the report cards, because they will see how the students are improving in specific areas as they go into their instructional plan.
All right, but is
The
there
tool
student
is not meant to be.
progress?
Yeah,
Can
the-
students themselves see how they are progressing? At least students themselves, do they get to see how they are, progressing themselves?
on
Or
the
that's
second
not
on the second model, in the second mode, where they are in a participation mode, that is the moment that the teacher assigns that to Google Classroom, they can work even as peers. So there is an
Okay.
interaction. There is, the basics of Neuropath is basically to promote interaction. So
Okay.
students have discussions depending on the grade level, because you're not going to apply this straight to all grade levels. They can actually engage on a discussion, on a review of the specific text, and have their different points of view is reflected in there. And there can be a survey at the end to actually measure the level of understanding of the reading. So it all goes into the instructional planning on the teacher. The advantage of this is that they have now interactive tools that they can use with the regular Google Classroom, with the regular Google Slides, with Word, Docs, or spreadsheets, or any other tool that they are using. They can make it interactive. They didn't have that ability before, and they had
All right.
templates. So there are ideas already developed in that share for them. So if they are looking something in content that is math, they can go there. If they are looking for something that is in science, they can go there. If they are looking for something that is ELA, they can go there. No, don't forget that we have a myriad of resources now with new CLA, we have Learning Explorer, we have many other tools available for the teachers, but as content. This was basically to support the delivery of the instruction. And the assessment of the instruction happens well with report cards, with iReady, with all these other assessment tools that we have. And now that the state actually reinstated the 3-2A assessments, that is coming next week. We are going to start with ELA 3-2A, math, and science 4 and 8, and then also nice SLAT and regions. So it's the full, it's the full load of all the assessments.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Okay, David, do you have any questions, or are you good?
I'm good. I think I played with a few sample lessons, so I kind of that dovetails with my limited experience, so I'm happy.
Okay, perfect. The only thing I was going to add is, have we had any feedback from the younger grades, the teachers, of any difficulties with the younger students, right? Because they may not, especially for the not for the interactive part, but for the part where they go off on their own and do lessons. Have we had any feedback from them that they need extra assistance, or are we good there?
It hasn't made it our way on that. I can tell you that it was very new to a lot of especially the younger grades, those teachers. But that hasn't come our way. But if it does, again, we can, tailor our instruction, our training to cover those items. Again, it can be a bit overwhelming, one more tool, right? But there was a lot of immediate positive feedback or excitement, at least, of like, okay, this is good. I can see this being useful. But that kind of question hasn't come back to us as a result of the training. As always, we make ourselves available, myself, Laura DeAndrea, and even if the principals were to get the question, I wouldn't get it directly. They would send it to us. But that has not happened.
Okay,
So
Thank you.
I'm going with no news is good news here.
sounds good. Thank
I
you.
also, I would like to add as well that we are ongoing engaged on evaluating our programs. So we are doing a reflective evaluation on everything because as you probably remember, during the pandemic, we got everything that we could gather to put at the service of the students and the teachers because we were fully remote most of the time. So now we need to start evaluating what will work in both worlds, like not only to provide for a remote or virtual instruction or a virtual delivery, but also in person. And still, be interactive and be helpful for the teachers. And that's what we're doing. As part of our regular program evaluation, we want to start that probably at the middle of May is the time that we will meet with the instructional team, Lori, DeAndrea, Diego, and probably the principal, because the principals have been receiving all the feedback from the teachers, and have this discussed with Dr. Reynolds, and it will be part of the professional development plan for next year, as well as the instructional plan. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. I'm glad to hear that we're being very proactive with all these things because it can only help, right? So appreciate that.
We can only prepare, Mr. Pineda.
Absolutely.
That's all we can do, start getting ready for the reopening schools.
Sounds good. All right, so let's move on to item number 5, Windows 10 Pro upgrades. Let's see here. Who wants to provide that?
I'll start, and then I can talk to I can have Laser and Chris Cardi also join me on that conversation. We actually identify a series of devices that were not updated because of the pandemic in our main offices, in some of the classrooms, some areas of the schools. Our district office, our business office, they all upgraded. So when we identify these devices, we actually start jumping on that and trying to get everyone in every building upgraded to Windows 10. So our technicians start working in coordination with Laser and Diego, and got all the images and the deployment. And all of this was done seamless. So we tried to don't interrupt any work that was during the day. It was done quickly. And I'm going to turn to them to tell you how it was in every one of the buildings. Go ahead, Laser.
I'm going to actually kick this to Neil because he was
he was
the
doing
lead
the,
on this.
yeah, he was doing the schedule,
Yes,
correct?
he was the lead on this, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So our
Lizzie,
goal
if you
here.
make me write down that you're gonna kick it to Neil. Okay, I will write that down.
So our goal here, like Mr. Ramirez says, is to hit the admins and secretarial staff first. They're the easiest ones to get to, and in general, just to upgrade. Any issues we have had with the image have been filtered through. When we upgraded the business office first, they have less restrictions compared to, say, classroom teachers and say secretarial staff. So we were able to catch certain things and kind of fix it on the spot, if you will. So the image went really flawless. Other than that, they seem to be grabbing hold of this and using it. Of course, we've had to train them here a little here and there and see where everything was. It's a little bit different. It just looks different, operates the same. But we actually have a running board right behind me with everyone we have upgraded. So yes, business officials, principals, and a lot of the secretarial staff. Our goal, and you guys can jump on this, is to really aim for Windows 10 upgrade over the summer. As we go through throughout the buildings, we have noticed that the older models, so such as the 990s, so the 900 series, the 700 series, they do not take the Windows 10 upgrade. So as we see them, we replace them with the 3010s, the 720s, the 3020s, 3040s. All of these models can take that Windows 10 upgrade. So once we see them, we'll replace them in preparation for the summer when we can do a wide, district-wide upgrade to Windows 10.
Yeah, originally this was supposed to be a project last summer. We had planned, building by building, but the Chromebooks took priority, and it just became a huge project, like an undertaking. So, Windows, Microsoft stopped providing updates to Windows 7, so that created a problem in itself this year. Thankfully, more teachers are on the Chromebooks now than they're on the PCs. So it wasn't that big of an issue, but it's something that we do have to address. And we're trying to this year, but again, the Chromebooks again is still high on the priority list for a lot of the schools. So.
I just wanted to add, hello, my name is Chris Carty. I'm the lead technology specialist for the elementary schools in the district. Just to add on to what the guys said, in the elementary schools, what Neil had said is correct. We started with the administrators first because they are the most important group. And so they kind of were able to hit the ground running and take off seamlessly. But beginning this week, we started to sweep the building and survey each classroom to see exactly what is needed for each piece of hardware. So we've been documenting that as well and going through. So all of these machines will also be getting the appropriate upgrades.
Thank you for that. That's great information. I do have one question. Windows 10, as far as I'm familiar with it, Microsoft's changed the paradigm a little bit, and they've moved into this world of basically rolling updates, right? Where they release these, I think it's quarterly OS or biannually, I think actually, OS upgrades, and there's technically no Windows 11 coming, right? It's like Windows 10, 20H2 or whatever it is. Have we already accounted for that? Is that already planned out, and we already have a plan moving forward as to how we'll adopt those? Because I think it's we have an 18-month life cycle before Microsoft tells us we're out of support.
So according to what we captured with the conversations with the rec, they also have this plan in a way that, you're always kind of like behind at least 2 releases for security of the network. You never know what is going to happen with a new upgrade or a new update. Our internal controls is what we do this in a control environment. So Neil and basically the technicians have the ability that they can upgrade machines, see the behavior of these machines, and tell us ahead of time, oh, well, geez, this one really didn't go well with Google Chrome browser. Or we had to do some adjustments to, the Microsoft Edge. So,
an example of that is Symantec. When we had to deploy Symantec, we had a major issue of it wasn't working with a version of Windows. So we had to do Windows 10. We had to do a rollback to another version to get it completely going. So hence the reason of testing have a testing environment before we go live of deploying these updates.
The main goal is to have, the latest version available embedded in all levels, not only at the RIC level, but also at our local level, in our own local environment, available and released and deployed in the summer. Because we know that in the classrooms, those units, those desktop computers that were connected to the interactive boards were the last ones in our list because we were working remote. And then we had to work prioritizing the Chromebooks and the instructional side. So we want to recapture on that, review this, and that's what we're doing all this assessment right now. We have a good picture, probably by the end of this month, we will have a very good picture of what is needed, where, if we're talking about memory, or we're talking about replacing devices, or we're talking about upgrading devices, what are we doing? So we want to be sure that we have the data to support those decisions. Definitely we have a replacement plan that is still ongoing, but with this particular part of the upgrade, we want to be sure that if we can save money to the taxpayers, why not? We get upgrades of the memory and they work fine and they're ready to be deployed with a new version, excellent. But we need to be sure that we are doing what is the best for our environment and for our users, for the educators and for the students as well.
That makes a lot of sense, and that's a really good approach. So thank you for that. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I just want to add to that, and just everything ties in here. The biggest thing is just following the Lower Hudson Regional Information Center's recommendations. I mean, they deal with so many districts and so many different techs that on a lot of things you want to follow their lead. They have more access to a lot more information of what works, what doesn't work, what needs to be tackled immediately. They send out bulletins if if an update is required or recommended to be done immediately. So that's a lot of our base for what we do and how we do things. I can tell you that it has worked for us because, again, we don't want to be the first ones to find out or figure out that didn't work. So this is why they do what they do, right? They're the experts on this, and we know that there are people that just work on deploying this kind of stuff. So we rely a lot on their recommendation and expertise. The other thing that we find over time is even our systems. Just because there's an update doesn't mean we need the update, or that can break one of our existing systems, as it used to be the case of our finance system. It used to be very touchy with the exact version of files and dependencies. So not necessarily every update needs to be rushed unless there's a security vulnerability or need.
Thank you for that additional information. All right, let's move on to item number 6, Chromebooks troubleshooting and repairs.
So Neo can provide the update on that.
Yeah.
We have a good plan on that. Go ahead.
Yeah, so when we started this, we had a daunting 120 people, our kids, sorry, on this list. I'm happy to report that we don't have any more students on this waiting list. Right now, if there are kids waiting for a Chromebook, they meet with us, the techs, so either me at Woodlands, Cardi at Bailey, and then at Victoria at Leaf Jackson. So they'll send us an email, and they'll either give us the Chromebook and we can fix it on the spot, or they wait a day or two and then we call them, email them to come by and pick up a device. It usually doesn't take more than that, more than 2 days. I haven't seen any reports like that. We're usually good at we can either swap it out right there on the spot if it really is something that's really bad. That way the kid isn't left without a device because, schoolwork. We are in contact with our repair experts. His name is Shiv. So Chris Cardi and Victoria Bolton did a great job the other day and sent him over 50 devices to get repaired. Do we have that many students waiting for a Chromebook? No, but we want to be prepared for, incoming issues. We want to have them on the shelf just in case. If there's kids that say there's mass testing or something, we want to have that as a backup as well, right? So so far we gave them over 50 devices. I expect this within 2 weeks, honestly. Of course, when we get those devices, we check them, we re-enroll them, we make sure everything is okay. And if everything is not okay, we have a great relationship with them. So we can give them the device back, the company, give them the device back and say, hey, listen, this wasn't fixed. Can you guys fix it for us? And of course, they'll say yes, no charge, and repair whatever needs to be repaired.
Awesome. That's an excellent update. And thank you so much for being proactive and basically stocking those 50 when they come back. I'm very excited and very happy to hear that that wait list is down to 0. That's amazing. Thank you everyone for the efforts. Go ahead, David.
So generically, is it as hard to get replacement hardware as it has been in the past, or is that easing up?
So as of right now, it's hard to get it for a certain model. That is the C771s. The C740s, he says he has them on the shelf, ready to go, ready to take parts and repair our devices. He says that he's still waiting for parts for the C771s from China. He will give me an update once he has them. We've been holding off on those just so we don't bombard him with all these devices and That way we can keep track of what we give him. Once he gives me the A-OK, I'll relay with the team and we can go ahead and give those devices over to him.
Thank you.
There is I think that everybody knows because of the news that there is a shortage on microconductors. So that is coming. It's not yet in here affecting us directly because our issues are mostly on parts, moving parts, hinges, keyboards, keys, things like that. But when it comes to that part, definitely it's going to be noticed. It's going to happen because it's affecting large corporations, large industries. So it's going to affect education. But we've been working and being prepared. As you can see, these 50 devices are not even new devices. It's devices that we recycle, we repower to be used for instruction. So we still have some orders that we put in place already for incoming summer, so we are ready. We know that there is going to be a demand when we have an in-person instruction, because even though that you can ask the students to bring their devices, you might have a situation where you have to have an interactive session with a group of students somewhere, and you want to have at least a car available in every building. So that car can move around, go between floors or whatever it is. So it's all part of our planning, and supporting instruction, supporting curriculum instruction in essence.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was very helpful. Just one question came to my mind when you mentioned the cart. Are we developing also a procedure for if that cart does move between classrooms and we're still in COVID world, are we coming up with a plan to somehow cleanse the devices, or is that not an issue?
We had that plan even back during the time of the pandemic. And we work with facilities. They were providing with all the different sanitizing products and everything, but we never really got to put it to execution because we were remote. Obviously, we had to take that out of the shelf and start looking at that scenario as well. It's a good point. I want to take a note on that, and we'll definitely report back and what we can work out for the incoming year. Even though the pandemic is slowing down with all the vaccinations and everything, it would be an illusion to think that it's not here. It's still here. It's still lethal. It's still killing some people that are at risk, and our children probably, the children are the less, but they can be carriers, and that's the biggest concern. So we need to be sure that we provide with a sanitized environment, a safe environment that is conducive to learning. Thanks.
Thank you. Antoinette, it looks like you have a question.
Yeah, I do. I just wanted to make sure that I was hearing right and that whoever is watching is hearing correctly. Could you clarify, Mr. Ramirez, what you said about the cleaning of the carts and in between usage? I just want to make sure I heard clearly and that everyone else did as well.
Yes, so it was in our radar at the time when we were in the middle of the pandemic. We weren't fully remote, so we never really executed that plan. We worked with facilities. Basically, facilities was provided with all the sanitizing products and ensuring that all the areas were clean before instruction. Okay. Now, in between, what you just mentioned is very important. In between, we probably will need to empower, having those products in the classroom for the usage of the educators and the students. Because it is not going to be it's impossible to really be everywhere that is needed, but we can have procedures in place that people can follow. And, use this product first, use this product second, do it like this, and probably provide some sort of, like a guidance in terms of the manual, the instructions on how to do it. Following basically on the CDC guidelines.
Okay, if we could just make sure that that's happening, that would be wise.
I appreciate this from the board and from the members of this committee. I'm gonna bring this to Mr. Falcon as well.
Thank you.
Lisa Raymond, and we have to have it in our plan. We have to have it, definitely. Those are procedures need to be included.
Thank you, Mr. Ramirez.
Thank you.
So Antoinette, just to clarify, that was only for if there was a cart with Chromebooks that needed to be shared between classrooms or something like that.
Yeah,
Cohorts, yeah, however you do it.
or cohorts. Yep,
So it's-
exactly.
It's not like it's happening today and kids are touching these devices. I just want to make sure everyone, the public is clear on that, you know?
Yes, I wanted that exactly, Ashley. So thank you. Yep.
Well, all right. Thank you. Let's move on to item number 7, central registration procedures.
So unfortunately, the Maris is not joining us at this time, but we had a conversation to review our registration procedures. As you know, we are enabling the access to online registration, which is really online pre-registration. Is a facility for the parents to submit some of the information online and engage in the process with the registrar. What we wanted to do is also be sure that as we do this, we ensure that our transportation only students, the students with disabilities, and everybody else can have an opportunity to update their information also through the portal. So all of those will be enabled very shortly to ensure that registration season goes smoothly. Registration season really started a month ago for us in full motion, and we have so many registrations that we're processing. As you know, enrollment in most of the schools have been reduced in the region. And it's not something, nobody can really say that it's related to the pandemic or not, but the fact is that people are trying to be safe. People are trying to, just stay in their districts. So there is no incoming, not much of the incoming registrations in most of the schools. However, in our case, because we are unique, we are one of the few, we are the second school district in Westchester that offers a pre-K program. So there's only 2 districts that do that, Yonkers and ourselves. So it becomes very attractive for the families, and families coming to Greenburgh, they see these programs as the best way to actually educate their children, provide for an environment where they can learn. So we want to be sure that we're ready for any influx on registrations, and we're trying to work in both ways, also in person, but at the same time, doing a pre-registration online. And the environment is already prepared. One of the project managers for that section was Mr. Rendon. You want to add anything to this, Diego?
Sure. Let me switch hats here. So I have a meeting tomorrow morning with Ms. Lugo. It's our final review of what the actual form will look like, and to make sure that all our forms are up to date. Medical forms change year to year, so we need to make sure we have the right version of these forms. And then obviously the information will be updated on the registration page as to what the procedure will be like, and hopefully it will ease a lot of the registration process for a lot of people. As long as you have access to a computer, you'll be able to pre-fill a lot of the information online, which is very nice. If you think about paper registration, let's say there's 10 forms. Every form requires a name, first name, last name, date of birth, and a lot of repetitive information on 10 forms, right? So what this will allow a user or a parent to do is, fill out information once, if you will, and then obviously that information gets trickled down to all the different sections that registration required. And also it will facilitate, it will decrease the amount of data entry that the registrar has to do, because the parent is putting that information in. After it's reviewed and accepted and validated, then it goes into the SIS, into student information system, and the registration process moves forward. So it should ease up online registration in general. Parents can pre-fill a lot of this information, saving time along the way, in short.
Thank you. That's very helpful. I do have 2 questions. One, is the form available in multiple languages or only English?
English and Spanish at this time.
Okay.
We are working on, Google Translate is available on the website. So we wanted to see how we can automate that process. The challenge here is that for us to keep with the regulations and the guidance from the state, we can offer in 2 languages. Multiple languages would will require some vetting and some verification with them because the information that is shared at registration is PII. So we want to be very careful how we manage all of this. Personal identifiable information shouldn't be available online just without any authentication. And when you add the layer of authentication, then a process that was supposed to be easier and faster could become really difficult. and we want to facilitate rather than create more challenges for our parents. So we are basically offering in those two languages at the beginning. And it's also engagement on the phone. For some of the PII is done directly with the registrar. So it's not even through the forms online. But general information that can be captured that is needed and is repetitive, definitely we will save a lot of time.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And then the other question is, I don't recall, maybe we already have a way to do this and it's just not coming to my mind. The emergency contact information that we send out to have the parents fill out every year to update, emergency contact information, et cetera. Do we have that online or is there a plan to put that online?
That is part of that portal. That is part of that portal because the emergency contact information is part of the registration process. That's when the parent provides who will be the emergency contact in case that they are not available to pick up the children or any other actions that refer to the child. The second item is all of this is now an eSchool Plus. So it goes through the system. So anybody that has the access rights based on their position, on their title, they can access the information and easily attend to any needs in terms of getting information about a child, time to pick up or anything like that, or who is authorized to actually do the pickup for a child in a school building. And that was done through the pandemic. We did all of those updates with the registrar.
Thank you.
Donette, I think she has a question.
Yeah, Antoinette, go ahead.
All right, I'm raising my hand in between when I'm at a red light or not. So my question was, I have two questions. One question to follow up on what Carlos just said and what you asked Ashley about emergency cards. So I know that's there for a lot of the incoming new parents. Has the system or have we caught up with the students who've been here before this sort of before that technology was available, having the emergency cards online? Yes.
And we work with every building. Through the pandemic, the project was actually in both 1,200 records updated. Wow. Okay. It was intense because, and I want to thank the building principals and everybody that really support that process because we start with registration, but we had to involve the secretaries at every main office because they were doing some of this work in the past, but we didn't want to just do it for the new parents. We wanted to do it for everybody that is in our database. So I'll give you an example. About 1,200 records that we identified were missing email addresses. During the pandemic, that was the way that we communicate with the parents, that we have all our communications through school message. So we had to have that updated. So we engage a task force and we start working on that every day, every week, and we start minimizing the numbers until we finish. Now is maintenance. We need to be sure that we have proper procedures in place, and that's what we did with the MARIS. The MARIS is the main entry for any information on phone numbers, addresses for the district. So if that is captured in one of the buildings, they immediately report to her, and it's updated in School Plus, and then it's hard-coded. It's basically a way to ensure that we have our information updated, and we can also do the residency verifications at the same time. So it's a first look at that process as well.
Okay, my other quick question was because since you guys were talking about registrar, I'm also on the community, the education. I think it's the education committee, or I can't remember which committee it came up on. But what did come up was tracking students who have left the school district, and I think it was referenced that through the registrar, there's some report, maybe not the registrar as a person, but through the registrar's office, there is some sort of report that we could get that lets us know, how many, students have left the district. Carlos, so my question to you is there a report that exists like this? And well, let me just start with that. Is there a report that we can get that tells us how many students left the district?
Yes. Yes, and I believe that actually it was the week that I was on vacation. I believe that Dr. Reynolds, it was in one of the committees, probably the education committee. And,
Yeah, okay,
and
great.
he worked with the Maris and Christina Prisco, our data manager, on
Okay.
running that kind of report. So I'm sure that the report is already created. If it's not, we
Okay.
can recreate it quickly and get at least an idea of the number of students that left and what grade levels were affected. Because I can tell you
Yeah.
right now, enrollment as of beginning of the school year in Bets Day shows a contraction on enrollment in some of the buildings.
Okay.
Our Woodlands Middle High School, for example, last year ended with 742 students at the end of the year. Now we are in 680 something. So
Okay.
we can see 60 students that are less in there. And you know, these indicators are released every month to administration, and I think that we also share with the administration shares with the board. So it's and look, it's no, these are indicators that we work all the time with the principals and with the educators. So
So
if
is this,
you want the
Carlos, is
actual
this,
report, I can go.
yeah, but is this different from, so I want to be clear, is it different from the attendance report where you have to literally go down and try to count it out? Like, is this a report that's separate, that just only shows students who left the district?
It's separate, yes. It's a
Okay.
separate report and it's just showing by building the number of students that left. It's basically what we do when a student leaves the district, they have to sign an exit form. It's part of the
Okay.
process. So the exit
Okay.
form lists the codes that are applied to the student. The student went to another school district in the state. The student went to another school district out of the state. All those codes are grouped. So what we can do is we can have a summary. Yeah.
All right, great. I can't wait to see it.
Not a problem. Yeah.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. One more thing. One more thing. In that report, does it give you like the date so you can kind of see whether there's specific trends as when students leave, anything like that?
We run, I believe this report was run year to year because it kind of emulates the BETS report, right? The count,
Okay.
the snapshot is an annual report. We can do it
Okay.
monthly. We could do it monthly, but I think that is more meaningful if we run on quarters or we do like semester based, like, you know, one cut off in January, another one in June will be probably more efficient in terms of looking at the behavior of the data.
Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's move on to item number 8, Infosec Implementation. And I will, before you guys start covering that, I will preface the conversation with, I'm not sure if you guys caught wind of it yet, but the NSA, CISA, and FBI issued a joint statement today about some concerns they have with some persistent threats coming out of Russia. So I'm sure that you guys probably saw it already. It was very recent this afternoon, so it's a little new. But you know, as you guys cover it, I'm sure you'll mention some of that and how we're planning for that as well.
So the implementation started, and I'm gonna actually have our specialists, Diego, Neil, we're part of the whole process. And what we're doing right now is we're gathering the data. We are getting all our inventory on our appliances, devices, and everything that we have that can be a conduit for any kind of threat in terms of phishing campaigns or malware or anything like that. So we want to be sure that we are not proactively protecting, but at the same time, we are looking at compliance with an NIST as what it was released to you when we did the presentation with the REC. So the standards are basically the framework is basically what it will guide our preparation for compliance and full protection of our environment. Infosec is exciting news for us because it's a full developed solution. I don't know, Neil, do you want to take a stab at this, Diego?
Sure, I'll start. So we had, in regards to Infosec, this is a platform that we have chosen to do our data privacy and security assessments and training of our staff. So we actually had our implementation call last week. There were some delays with the actual ordering and processing of the licenses through the RIC, but once we got that sorted out with that department, we were able to move quickly and have our initial call. We are basically in the process of setting up our AD Active Directory sync so that we get our users listed, make sure that we have everyone that needs to be included set up, and then we would move into our phase 2 of the implementation, which is to set up our initial campaign and deploy it. Nobody's going to get any heads up as to when that's happening. So read everything twice before you click on it, because when you least expect it, it could be something from us. As with any kind of assessment and test, we're not going to distribute it with the world. So there is, and it's not a gotcha game. We need to make sure we're clear on that. But as part of the implementation recommendation from Infosec, we just want to get a real true baseline of where we are as an organization, so we can determine what our training plan will be. Right? Do we want to find out? Do we have a high level of users that are happy clickers, or are we good? Are we low base where we can educate our users differently? So after we run that campaign, the system is going to make recommendations, and working along with the data privacy and security team at the RIC, who are big helpers in this whole process. We will make adjustments and then start the training process. By that, we would run subsequent campaigns, try to come up with analyzing the data. Is it mostly teachers? Is it mostly office staff? Is it a department? And then just tailor the trainings based on all those results. I'm personally excited for this. We want to really see this in action. And again, it's not a gotcha game. We just want to make people aware and that this applies to their personal life. This is not just privacy at work. We're hoping that the users get a real understanding of how vigilant they have to be on every email they get that says free. There's nothing free. Or how I can make an email look like it's from Netflix. That's not. It's me. I just want your credentials. So we're just trying to raise awareness and also stay within compliance of the law to do requirements that we are supposed to abide by, because that is a real thing. So in short, that's where we are with Infosec implementation. I know Neil shares my excitement, as you saw in his background, because we got to see the actual live product and what some of the templates that we can use, and believe me, they are tough to notice that they are not a real email from Netflix or something like that. So stay tuned. Neil, would you like to add anything to that?
No, you pretty much summed it up. I think the best part about Infosec is the fact that, say they were to click this email, we can customize it with our banner to make it say it's from Greenburgh, right? We can do all that. But the main part I'm excited for is that it'll train them on the spot. And it's not a long, intensive video where it's like 20 minutes long. It's usually 2 minutes long because some of us have short attention spans, right? And some of us are very busy throughout the day. So when this happens, train them on the spot, see why they were phished, what can happen, and how they can prevent it.
Excellent, thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, that looks like a no. Mr. Ramirez, can I ask for one thing? At our next meeting, can you just give us an update once your team has done the assessment of appliances and all that, and just confirm if we're good? or if there's anything we need to update.
We actually identify a few things that we were upgrading already. So I will give you a final report probably on what we found, what was done, and if there is anything pending, I'll definitely put it in the summary.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, I just want to thank the team again for the efforts, to Mr. Randall and Mr. Ragudio's points. Information security as a whole, part of it is done on the back end by the technology team and no one notices it, right? But a large part of the information security world really is collaboratively with everyone that uses the systems. I mean, we are the #1 source for vulnerabilities to actually exist and to actually take foothold. And once they're in, it's hard to get rid of them. So thank you so much for those efforts and thinking about this in a very macro type of approach. I think it makes a lot of sense, and just thank you again. It's very good.
I just wanted to add one more thing that is important as awareness. In one of the meetings, it was the latest DPO mentoring, the district privacy officers mentoring session with the RIC, and the state actually released a template letter that is going to some districts. They are spot checking who is ready, who's not ready, who has the process defined, the forms that are available for the public, and how much of the data privacy policies are in place, already published in the website, and things like that. I will probably share with you, and when we go into the closed session, this actual template that came from the state, and it's just preparation that we need to have in our minds, and be sure that we are not only doing everything in the back end and the infrastructure or the technology, but also in the governance, in the regulation, compliance, and ensure that we don't have anything left to the chance, and then we get cited because that could happen. And so far, I gotta say, we have a great team. We take care of business in the local level and environment, but we need to have all of these governance items like the policies and everything in place. And just wanted to remind the ranking members of the board and Antoinette, our president, that's something that we need to take a closer look and get it done soon.
Understood. Thank you, Mr. Ramirez. Yeah, we're definitely pushing that along as quickly as we can. And as soon as we get a draft of that policy in front of the board, I'm sure we will take action on it.
Thank you.
Ditto.
Okay, let's move on to item number 9, ECP short-term plan, ventilation and fans. David, would you like to talk about that one a little bit?
Sure. So the short-term plan is, of course, to get the ECP building open for full-time in-person instruction prior to the fall. A couple of board meetings back, we went over that, and they thought they could get it done prior to September. And basically the idea is that you do what we did for RJ Bailey in terms of putting fans in on a temporary basis, and then you come along later with phase 1 and put the mechanical ventilation in. The fans worked fine in Bailey, but Bailey, of course, had a really robust steam heat function, and ECP furnace, it turned out, while it has the capacity to heat far more square footage than is actually in ECP, the piping that's attached to it is not functioning properly, so we had some repair work to do on that. My question when we were about to do a walkthrough to try and determine what was going to happen and what the solution would be was, I knew that if they kicked in all of the electrical backup heaters that they have in the building at the same time, that what tends to happen is they pop the breakers. So I was then concerned that the technology guys might need to come in and see what needed to be done. Now, since then, we did have the walkthrough. Most of what needs to happen is fixes to the furnace, and so that's more of a mechanical operation than I think there are only a couple of space heaters that they had to put in the back rooms and the kitchen. So we don't think it's going to be the big power hit that we thought it was. My question to the technology administration is there anything you can think of that we need to worry about in terms of the short-term ECP fixes for pre-opening in the fall, or do you think we're good?
Well, I wouldn't say that we're good 100%, but we're still assessing. And I had a conversation with Mr. Falcon, and one of the items that definitely we need to look at in terms of power is probably minor upgrades. You know, looking at the basically see all the switches and the amperes, you know, the amperes are the right ones for all these new items that we're gonna put in there for ventilation, the fans and everything. We have a long history of what is called dirty power issues in our buildings because they are old. And you know, the infrastructure is just there for years and years, and nobody's fault. It's just never being upgraded, never being maintained probably the proper way. So we might need to upgrade a panel, upgrade some of the breakers, you know, better, bigger amperes capabilities, and that's what I could say in terms of the electricity. In terms of the technology, we are in the same way that we were before the pandemic. That building is ready and connected. We actually made provisions to have boards and anything that is needed to be moved or replaced if that is the case. And right now the infrastructure is ready. What we are concerned is that probably we will have, you know, because of the CDC guidance and all these mandates in terms of distance and all that, we gotta figure out how we're gonna work on the space. So, you know, technology, not a problem, but there is more into the planning of the whole preparation for instruction in person in there. I will suggest that we revisit that assessment of the panels and the actual switches, you know, like see if they can support all this equipment that you're gonna bring in for ventilation. And that is the short term, because that's to ensure that we can open in September. I don't know if anybody from my team has anything to say. Laser has been there for security cameras, so he also had a look at the building, and we actually identified one of our plazas that need to be moved from one area to a different area, but that's just a move for wires. And anything else, anybody? Diego, Neil? You have been
Yeah, the biggest thing there, and this is just, again, historical info. Just because there's an outlet, again, doesn't mean that everything's going to work. We've had it where, you know, they put on the microwave and the coffee pot on, and something trips, and then the whole IDF that serves that area can lose power because it's all one circuit, main office area. All these offices are all powered by the same circuit, so that kind of thing. I mean, everything's on battery backup, but we've had power issues, I guess you would call them. Nobody's fault, but I guess, you know, they kind of know, okay, you can't run the microwave and the coffee pot at the same time, kind of thing, which is kind of what you were kind of alluding to with the heaters as well.
Yes.
But as far as our equipment and our infrastructure, ECP main is very small. We had already our APs out there before the pandemic, and they all come out of one place. So we would needed to do any kind of upgrade to our electrical. It wouldn't be a big project, if you will. Maybe isolating our closet aside from the main office, so that when they run the microwave and the copier and the coffee pot,
we don't
infrastructure
lose.
remains on. Right.
Okay.
But that's about what I can think of. The ECP issue in terms of power.
Right. Okay, so the long term, should I move on to long term or? Okay, so then the long term plan, of course, is we need to get through our current budget cycle, right? Past the next budget, get phase one going, and then we plan for phase two. And then depending on how the economy looks, how the rest of the recovery goes, we have this longer term goal of getting all the ECP students together in the same building. And you can do it in one of three ways. The most popularly put forward way is to add a wing onto Lee F. Jackson, small wing, And the second possibility is keep ECP where it is and build more classrooms around it. The third would be to add it on the administration building, but that's a much more complicated scenario. But nothing is off the table at this point. The question is, what kind of involvement do you guys need to have in this process in terms of planning safety and security and technology?
Well, obviously, any undertaking on a long-term plan for ECP will definitely involve technology and safety and security for the children, for the educators, for the staff. I believe that the biggest question for us right now is, because we have this short-term plan, it ties with the other one, because if we meet the goals of the short-term plan, we are first in line for the funding that is coming for the recovery from the government, from the federal government.
Okay.
If we don't meet that first goal, then we're not in line. And then we don't get any of the other. If we are in line, and this is all conversations with our SBO, Lisa is being on the task, and every time that we talk about this, it's definitely clear that in order to qualify for all these reinvestment funds that will come to the states from the federal government, you need to show your efforts. You need to show that you are making every effort to have a reopening of schools in person, safely, and with a conducive to learning environment. So we want to be sure that that happens. I believe that either of the choices that you mentioned before for the long term are doable. Definitely some sound better than the others in terms of the cost efficiency, because you don't want to make an investment that is not going to turn. We know for sure that in terms of the all administration building, it will probably be a larger amount of money, for sure. You know, just looking at the infrastructure that we have to upgrade and modify or anything like that. The other two ideas are more efficient, are more probably, you know, more doable. But I would like to hear from the architects. I'd like to hear from the committee, and that would be the facilities committee, and all the pros and cons. Because the moment that it's adopted, we want to go in and start looking at the infrastructure to provide for technology, to provide for safety, for security cameras, for everything that is needed. It would be fiscal responsible also to have that, because, you know, otherwise everything is done, and then at the end we gotta come in and see how we're gonna get those funds.
Mm-hmm.
And it will be another challenge. This is the time to be very careful with preparation, with planning, and this is the right way. I appreciate that we have this conversation and we have this as an item in our agenda, because it is the reality that we have to face. In the immediate, with reopening the schools in September, and also in the long term, which is not really long term, we're talking about right after budget is passed, we need to engage on that process to see what is needed, how we can get all the funding secure, so we can provide for the children. ECP as it is right now, as it stands right now, it doesn't meet even the minimum requirements from the state in terms of the space or size of the classroom and all of that. So we know this, and it's been a long time. It's just we grandfather the rules because it's already licensed. It's a licensed space to do instruction. Yep. So once we internalize all of this and have these conversations, I think that we will find the best way to actually address it and work together on the best solution. You can count with the technology team. The technology team is here to work on any of the solutions, whatever the community and the leadership and the board decides. That's the way that we're going. We're going with that, and we will prepare accordingly.
Thank you. Anybody else?
No, I think he covered everything. That's great. Thank you.
Okay. And then security vestibule. As you know, before the pandemic hit and everything went to ventilation, we had come up with a design for the security vestibule for Woodlands Middle High School. There was Smart Schools funding that was initially only for technology. It got changed at the legislative level to allow for it to be for security, and we felt we needed a good, strong security vestibule out in front of the high school. So the plans are sitting there with the architects complete, where they've got the input from the principals. Everything is there. We need to go back to the application, and so we're looking to someone with expertise in that area. And Carlos, can you help us?
Yes, absolutely. And I want to make I want to volunteer to go from beginning to end on this one. As I shared with you before, in the facilities committee and also with the SBO, I found that the plan was halted. It was submitted and it was then returned to review. We obtained a project number from the facilities department at the ACT. And there was actually, I was able to recover some of the information that the architects put together for the vestibule in terms of costs and details of each one of the items that they needed, amounting to the total that we were allocated for the Smart Schools Bank, $481,000. So I'm gonna review this document. I'm gonna provide with a current draft and then a revised one that we can actually submit ASAP, and then I follow up with SCD, because that's all that we need to do. We need to have the architects working with us hand to hand, and we can get that approved. If we go into closed sessions, I can actually share with you the details on that information that I recaptured from the state, because it's still not, public information. Is not something that was.
The public can see that there's a letter of intent. That's about it.
That is what is released, but I actually got what is behind the letter and the actual details if you want it. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Antonella, it looks like you have your hand up.
I just had a quick question. What is the timeline on this? I definitely understand, COVID came and sort of changed and halted things. But Mr. Ramirez, from what you just said, what is the timeline on getting us to finally move forward with this?
So initially, when Mr. Riley, who was the consultant that was secured by the business office to start that process, they told about 12 to 18 months. The time already passed. It's about 3 years now since that moment. And what happens is the state also kind of froze on this at one point. They were moving just smart technology projects, not safety and security. They were moving just because this was done under the umbrella of safety, high-tech security. That's what it was. So I believe there is no deadline, but what I want to do is set up some milestones for us. Like right now, I have a plan that is the last draft that was approved, submitted, discussed, and then got archived. I'm gonna recover that, update information, and I will say the most that we should take no more than 4 to 6 months to get this done. I will aim for the end of the school year. I want to have this at least in the table for the committee that approves the Smart Schools Bank, this plan by June. And then whenever that committee meets, because remember, they don't meet regularly. They meet every other 6 months or even a year. There was a meeting just recently, I believe it was before January, that Cuomo called from the Division of Budget, and they approved hundreds of the plans. And I was surprised ours wasn't approved. And then I went back and I did some research and I found this. But we can actually move it ahead. So I'm willing to do that effort. And if you charge me with that, we will definitely do that. My team and I, we're ready to push it, make it happen.
Well, I think that we should, this is something that, should have moved, already. We had, the board approved, we received the feedback from the administration, the application went in. We kind of need to move forward on this.
Right now, it was on a status of pending, and is with that, it has been with that status for months, for actually years. But I understandable, because during the pandemic, everything got on hold.
Yes, of course.
Technology was moved ahead. They didn't move high-tech security items much, but there were some approved at the last meeting. So that's what I want to go review, if all the information can be updated, because some of the costs, every line item and the cost needs to be updated, current pricing, and that's what I'm gonna do. Look, we're gonna work diligently on this and get everything in place as needed, and then I will ask the question to the state. And Lisa actually reached out on her own also and got some answers. So it's tag team. We will work together on this and we'll get it done.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, awesome. So that is the end of our agenda. For our listening public, I'm going to ask for a motion for us to go into private session now so we can discuss some additional security and safety related items. So for our listening public, that's basically the end of our agenda. When we come out of that session, we're basically going to adjourn. Do I have a motion to go into private session?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
Okay, all those in favor?